My name is Wendy Pieh, and I own Springtide Farm along with my husband and daughter, and we raise North American Cashmere goats. And one of the things that we focus on, if you'll see the goats as we work through them, is the silver-colored guard hair, and also we like to have the longer guard hair that protects the fiber. And you'll see some goats we have that on, and some that we don't. So what we're looking at today is hooves and feet. And I have goats in here that some are untrimmed, so you can get an idea, I think, of what's going on, and I'll at least trim one hoof for you so you can see that happening. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a goat that has really good feet, and you'll get to see that, and I'll explain it. And then we're all done. I'm going to hold some feet that you can see the difference in contrast because they're next to each other. So if that makes sense, we'll come along here. Excuse me, Riley. This is Rena. Rena's a 9-year-old doe. She does well in fiber competitions, and she has a really nice foot. This year I'm having to trim a lot more because the weather, they don't get out as much and travel as much, so they're getting a little bit more work on them. But she used to go to Rhinebeck and always did well. All right, so when you have a foot that's a good foot, this foot's a little longer than it should be, but it has some roundness to it. I'm going to show you her other front foot because it's even better. So what you want is a foot that's going to be big enough to take care of holding the animal up and wear well. You see this over here needs to be trimmed down on her, so she could use a trim. This hoof is a little long, but that's a well-formed foot, and her other foot's even nicer, and I'll show you that as well, her other front foot. The back feet, okay, it's okay. It's okay. I know. The back foot, hold still, it's okay, Rena. Trim, I'm not sure. Hang on, baby girl. Okay, here's a really nice example of, this is a good foot, but see how this is curving. That needs to be cut off. I don't have my trimmer with me, but I'll show you how you trim it a little bit. That's still a well-shaped foot. The back feet tend to be a bit smaller and narrower this way. Can I have your other one, just so we can have a comparison? Come on, pick up. Oh, you're a good girl. All right. So that one is similar, and you'll see on some others. This is a little bit narrower than I'd wish, but it is a back foot, and they are narrower. I'm going to turn her around, Yvonne. Come on, good girl. It's okay. It's okay because your really good foot's over here. Yeah, that would be great. Good girl. Okay, pick up. Good girl. All right, if you come around and see this foot, this was the one that I like the best. You see how well-rounded that is. It's nice. Instead of going in a line kind of like that, and I'll show you a foot that does that, it's rounded. And so this is going to carry her weight well. And as the hoof grows out, even if it gets a little long, which it is now, it spreads when she steps on it, just like that. And so what's in here can dry out. If you have a long, narrow foot, even when it's not too long, it'll start to bend over and trap moisture in here, and then you sometimes get a little bit of soreness on their foot right in here. So that's Rena. I think I'm going to show you Riley because Riley is Rena's daughter. And so what's interesting is that when you're breeding your goats and you're looking for particular characteristics, one of the things that I really like to worry about is feet. Here in the Northeast we have a humid environment, and so a problem we can really get is the moisture that gets in between those two cloves that I showed you on Rena. So hang on, Riley. Good girl. Pick up, please. Good girl. So on Riley, I'm just going to show you this one foot. You see how that's a nice, well-built foot. And guess who it's like? It's like it's her mom. And so that's what I'm looking for when I'm breeding these goats, is that kind of a hoof where I can count on it holding its shape, spreading well when she steps on it. When she puts weight on it, you see that foot's going to separate out, even though it's a little bit long. And she won't trap moisture in here and get any kind of, I call it hoof scald, but I don't know what it is. You have to treat it with iodine. Thank you, Riley. So take a look at Moxie. Moxie's so pissed off at being in here that she didn't even eat all her oats. What's up? Look. I'm not going to eat your oats? Not right now. Okay. Moxie's 8 years old this year, and she's a very nice goat. She's never been off the farm. Your foot. Okay, so this is a black foot. That's a difference in the 2 feet. It's also well shaped. It might not be quite as well shaped as Rena's. It's a little bit small for the heft on this goat, so I might like to see that a little bit larger. But that's still a decent hoof. So, do you want to show a back one? Could you stand that? Might have to turn her around. Hang on, sweetheart. Come on around. Can you come around? You're not getting too upset? You might want to be at her front, Yvonne. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. All right. This is one of our alpha goats, and she's always fussy about getting handled. Well, just to show you by comparison, pick up. There's another. Let's see how that's a little more pointed than Rena's feet. All right. So this is still a good foot. And I don't know if I've ever trimmed this goat. She wears well, doesn't grow particularly fast. She could use a trim on her heels. These are the heels right in here right now, and some of this extra lip taken off. But she won't suffer if I don't, but I'll try to trim everybody in the next little bit. I'm going to do a back foot. So this really needs a trim, and I'll do this before I put her back out, and I can do that if people want to see it. Where this is starting to fold over on this, it'll hold moisture in. This is not a good or a bad. It's a kind of an in-between hoof compared to next door with Rena. So it's a little bit narrow, so it might start to see how there it's starting to, as it gets longer, go like that, and so that'll begin to trap moisture. That's a trimming problem. I can fix that and will with trimming, but if she's out and not getting trimmed, that's going to lead to problems for her. Okay, good girl. Now, let's see. Okay, let's go look at a yearling. Hi. Hi, Tiara. Tiara is, well, she's coming 2 now. She was a yearling last year. And her sire, it's from Goat Knoll Farm out in Washington State, so a buck that we brought in. I wish she had a little longer, heavier guard hair, but I hope she develops that as she grows. So if we turn around, Tiara, it's a little easier for the camera. Good girl. It's okay. 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 Good girl. Now, I get what I expect. Tiara's going to be kind of in between. Okay, so to see how her foot is smaller because she's younger, but it's also, it's not narrow yet, but it's something I'd keep an eye on. All right. Again, this can use a trim right around the outside here, but I left these because I want you to see how they grow naturally. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, can I have a back foot, please? I'm expecting this to be kind of long, but we'll see. Good girl. Good girl. Not too bad. Actually, this back foot is pretty nice. It's see how nice and round this one is? And so it's quite well balanced. Again, a trim, you just trim off this. I'll show you, I've got one goat I saved. That's a good one to show you trimming on. But that's just great. This is a little narrower. But again, that's not going to give her any trouble. Remember we looked at the other back foot that would start to bend over? She's not going to have any trouble. That's not going to happen with her, so she'll have good spreading. Can I just see the other one while we're here? Thank you. Good girl. Good girl. So this one's more what you expect on a back foot. See how they're both narrower? And that's okay. It's not fabulous. But it's all right. It'll wear well. Again, I've never trimmed this goat. This winter, I guess everybody's going to get a trim. Good girl. Thank you. Okay, all right. So Makutsi, if I remember right, has a pretty good foot, but it might be a little small. Here. Oh, now that would work, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay, pick up. Good girl. Okay, so this foot really needs a trim. You see, that's the base of the foot down in here. And you take off the toes. It's okay. Hold still, sweetheart. No, hold still. Hold still. It's hard for the camera. Good girl. Yeah. So you trim off these heels. This is just callus here on the foot. Just like, you know, what we have on our fingernails or our fingers. And that can come off. If you don't trim that off, you get them looking real funny when they walk and they're uncomfortable. Other than that, the foot is in pretty good shape. And that's an okay foot, but it's not something I'd write home and brag about, particularly like I did on Rena and Riley, and to some extent Moxie. Okay, thank you. That was really irritating, wasn't it? Hold still, hold still. Oh. I'm going to do a back foot on her, thanks. Yeah. I know. They really hate having their back feet done. Hold still. Hold still. So that's a pretty good foot, but again, see how that's long and starting to bend, so I need to be cutting that out, trimming that down so that holds well. But that's a pretty good foot on this goat. All right, good girl. Now we're going to do Blythe next, and then I'll show you one that I think is a pretty good slippery, narrow foot. Blythe did well at the shows this year, didn't you? The fleece shows, yeah. Okay, pick up. Good girl. All right. There's snow in there. Okay, on this foot is nice and round and well shaped. Play with this. Okay, what I'm going to show you is just trim down a bit so you can see the shape of this foot. Now see how I'm just snipping off those heels? Okay. I'd be very embarrassed if I made her all bloody while you're watching. I actually like this foot quite a lot. It's nice and rounded. When you are trimming, one guideline is to go down till you get pink right in here and then kind of even it up. But always remember you can cut these heels off. They're just callus, and she'll be much happier now with that. But that's it. The only thing on this foot is I'm not sure about how it's going to grow as she grows. She's just coming 3 years old, and it seems a little bit small to me, but it's very well shaped. Okay, good girl. All right. It's funny I brought her out as not being terribly good, but I'm pretty happy with these feet. Again, I'm just trimming down to show you the shape. I'm not going to go real far. You see how you begin to see the shape of the hoof as you go down. And that's another nice foot. Again, it's a little small, but it's really well shaped. So that's really nice. Good girl, Blythe. All right. Now I'll show you one that. Oh. Yes, I know. It's just terribly insulting, but it's okay. It's all right. I know. This is very bad. All right. This goat, I'm hoping she does. Well, maybe it's the other one. This is not as slippery as I wanted to show you. My problem, not a problem, but what I do with goats that develop a really narrow hoof, I don't keep them. If I do, I generally pay for it with them having, excuse me, a lot of trouble with their feet. So see that's starting to get a little pink there? So I don't want to go too far beyond that. If you cut right in here, there's a big, what is it, a vein or an artery or something that comes out, capillary, something, there's a blood source right in here, and it will bleed and scare you to death. And the goat will be lame for a few days, but it stops bleeding on its own quite quickly. And it's more embarrassing than anything else. And the goats are quite smart, and they will limp when you're around in particular. So I'm guessing that that's just a little, yeah, see, that wasn't really blood that was there. So that's not as bad a shaped foot as maybe her other front one will be bad. That could be a little wider, but it's a pretty well-shaped foot. Is that okay? We'll do a back foot. Hang on, big girl. I know we're not doing goat husbandry, but it can't hurt to shape up these feet while we got them. Now this is a really little foot. It doesn't really particularly need much trimming, but that's very small. If you look at the proportion of the goat, this is a big goat, and she's only 3. She's going to get bigger. And how small this foot is. It's not badly shaped, it's well shaped, but it's little. And so that's something I'll just want to keep an eye on, how she goes. It's important to know that goats carry 70% of their weight on the front. And so the back feet are more for power moves, that kind of a thing. And the front is for bearing the weight. So that's why the front feet need to be bigger and rounder than the back feet do. Nonetheless, I think that's a pretty small foot. Pick up, please. Good girl. Good girl. So again, this doe has never ever had a trim. So this is a result of all the snow, or she would be naturally wearing this down and I wouldn't be trimming it at all. Oh, there's just a little nibble here. When you're working with trimming your goats, you want to remember that the younger they are, the less room you got to play with before you run into something. I want to turn her around so that you can see the other front foot, because I think that's the one I earmarked to show you a poor foot. Come on around. Come on, hon. Good girl. Good girl. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, look at that. Okay. Yeah, this is pretty slippery. I call it a slipper foot, but I don't think that's the technical proper term. And I call it, hi. I call it a slipper foot because it's long and narrow. So this is a foot I'm going to want to keep an eye on as she grows. Again, I'm just trimming down those edges. In terms of this group of goats, this is the poorest foot that we've seen in terms of structure. It's healthy. There's nothing going wrong with it, and she's never been lame, but it's something I'll be aware of and watch for when she has kids. If I had a buck with a foot like this, I don't know if I'd breed him. It depends on some of his other qualities. Because again, on this farm, and mostly, at least in the Northeast, we have a lot of moisture. And that makes a big difference in the health of the foot and the concern we have to have about how the feet are. So that's showing you on some live goats. I'm going to show you some hooves. What we do in the fall when we do our culling is we save the hooves from the goats so that when we teach goat husbandry classes in the spring, people can practice trimming on a dead foot, and then they don't have to be so worried about touching blood or doing something wrong, and they can actually make a point of cutting too far and getting familiar with that. So when they work on a real foot with a goat that may or may not think that's the most wonderful thing in the world,